Welcome to the world of sci-fi stories, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. Enjoy the listening. Humanity's Hurricane-Class Battleship strikes fear into alien hearts. The arrival of the Hurricane-Class Battleship, the galaxy had always been a dangerous place. Many different alien species roamed through the stars, each with their own plans of conquest. They had seen countless civilizations rise and fall, but none had prepared them for the arrival of something new, something terrifying. The aliens had been watching a small human colony on the edge of their empire for some time. It was a peaceful colony isolated from the rest of humanity's matched territories. The humans, they were used to the quiet everyday life. They grew their crops, built their homes, and lived in harmony with their surroundings. But their peaceful existence was about to be shattered. A massive alien fleet, one of the largest ever assembled, was heading toward the colony. They had received orders from their emperor: destroy the humans and take the planet. It was just another simple conquest in the grand scheme of their empire, another world to add to their collection. But this time the aliens were unaware that their plan would soon be interrupted by something they had never seen before. Out of nowhere, a strange ship appeared on the radar. It was like no human vessel the aliens had ever encountered. It wasn't even close to being anything they had ever seen from the humans. The reports came in fast. This ship was different, huge, powerful. The reports called it the Hurricane-Class Battleship. At first the alien commanders didn't believe it. They dismissed it as an anomaly, maybe some new human prototype that didn't pose a real threat. But as they looked closer, fear began to settle in. This wasn't just a large ship. It was a symbol of something the aliens hadn't expected: human defiance. They had underestimated the humans for far too long, and now they were about to pay the price. The Hurricane-Class Battleship was still a mystery. It had been built in secret, far away from the prying eyes of the alien empire. The humans knew they couldn't stand against the alien forces with sheer numbers, so they had built this ship as their answer to the alien threat. But what the humans didn't know was how the aliens would react when they finally faced this ship in battle. As the Hurricane-Class came closer to the colony, the alien fleet began to panic. The humans had somehow managed to build a ship that could match them in size and firepower. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The ship was dark, almost black in color, with sharp edges that gave it an intimidating appearance. Its massive engines glowed bright blue, and the hull was reinforced with layers of armor that could withstand even the heaviest of assaults. The alien fleet was massive, hundreds of ships, all ready for the attack. But now they were questioning everything. Was this Hurricane-class ship a trap? Was it meant to draw them into a larger human ambush? The fear spread quickly among the aliens as the unknown ship neared. Meanwhile, on the Hurricane-class battleship, the humans aboard the ship were getting ready. The crew was a mix of soldiers, engineers, and scientists, all working together with one purpose: protect their home and their people. The captain, a seasoned leader named General Marshall, stood on the command bridge, staring at the view screen in front of him. He could see the massive alien fleet, their ships lined up and ready to strike. "This is it," General Marshall said quietly to himself, but loud enough for the crew to hear. "We've prepared for this moment. We must hold our ground and make them understand that humanity will never bow to anyone." The crew worked quickly, making sure all systems were online and ready for battle. The Hurricane-Class wasn't just a battleship, it was a fortress in space. Its weapons could tear through enemy lines with ease. The shields were nearly impenetrable, and the crew had trained tirelessly for this moment. As the alien fleet drew closer, the tension in the air was thick. The humans didn't know what the aliens would do next. Would they engage immediately, or would they hesitate? Unsure of the true strength of the Hurricane-Class, the crew had no choice but to wait and prepare for whatever was coming back in the alien fleet. The commanders were making their final decisions. The Emperor had given them one simple order: destroy the human colony. But now they had to deal with a new unknown variable. They couldn't just rush into battle with this new ship. It was too dangerous. "We need to send in scouts first," said one of the alien commanders, his voice trembling slightly. "Find out what this ship is really capable of." The decision was made. The alien fleet would send in a small group of ships to test the Hurricane-Class. If it could be destroyed with minimal damage to their forces, then they would launch a full-scale assault. But if the Hurricane-Class proved too powerful, they would have to reconsider their approach as the alien scouts moved forward. General Marshall watched from the command bridge, his eyes focused. He could feel the tension building. It was clear that the aliens were trying to assess the strength of the Hurricane-Class. But Marshall knew one thing for certain: this would be a battle the aliens would never forget. The first shots were fired. The battle had begun. The battle plan. The Hurricane-Class Battleship stood poised in space, a silent sentinel against the approaching alien threat. The hum of the engines and the faint buzz of the communication systems were the only sounds that filled the air. On the command bridge, General Marshall stood, his gaze fixed on the forward view screen. He could see the alien ships getting closer, a menacing fleet with overwhelming numbers. The time for hesitation was over. Marshall knew that humanity's future depended on this very moment. He took a deep breath and turned to his crew. "This is it," he said, his voice calm but full of authority. "The alien fleet is within range. Prepare the ship for battle." The crew sprang into action. Weapons officers began powering up the massive cannons on the ship's flanks. The engineers checked the shield systems, ensuring they were at maximum power. The communications officers sent out final messages to the other human colonies, letting them know that the fight had begun. Everyone knew the stakes. The Hurricane-Class Battleship was humanity's best chance at survival, but it was also their first and only real weapon capable of standing up to an alien invasion of this scale. There was no turning back now. The crew had trained for months preparing for a battle like this, but there were no guarantees. This was an unknown fight against a much larger enemy, and there was a palpable sense of tension in the air. Marshall's second-in-command, Lieutenant Harris, walked over to him holding a data pad with the latest intelligence. "General, the alien fleet is still moving toward us. Their scouts are being destroyed by our defensive systems. None have gotten through, but they're sending in reinforcements." Marshall nodded, his face stern. "I knew they'd hesitate, but they can't avoid the truth much longer. This Hurricane-Class was built to withstand their attacks. We need to show them that we won't back down." Harris was about to reply when the communications officer, Surgeon Weaver, spoke up. "General, we intercepted a message from the alien fleet. They're sending in their best fighters. They're preparing for a full-scale assault." Marshall's expression hardened. "So they finally understand. Let them come." With the aliens' approach confirmed, Marshall quickly gathered his senior officers for the final strategy meeting. They huddled around a large table with a digital map of the battlefield displayed above it. The alien fleet was massive, several dreadnoughts and hundreds of smaller ships. Marshall knew that a direct confrontation would be risky, especially if the aliens had more advanced weapons than expected. "We'll divvy our forces," Marshall instructed. "We'll let the alien fleet think they have the upper hand, lure them in, and then hit them with everything we've got. We need to focus on taking out their flagship first. Without that, their forces will collapse." The team nodded in agreement. Each of them had a role to play, and the plan was set into motion. The ship's main cannons were powered up, and all secondary weapons were primed for immediate use. The Hurricane-Class wasn't just a battleship, it was a mobile fortress designed for tactical warfare. Marshall knew that strategy was just as important as firepower. "We'll make our first move when they're within striking range," said the ship's weapons officer, Commander Chen. "Their flagship is the key target. Once we disable, the rest of the fleet should fall into disarray." Marshall nodded again, and the crew dispersed to their stations, each member focused on their task. It was clear that every decision, every move mattered. The Hurricane-Class Battleship had been designed to be fast, agile, and incredibly powerful, but it was also designed to work as a team. The crew had to be in perfect sync if they were to win this fight back on the alien side. The fleet commanders were still unsure of what they were up against. Their fleet was large, powerful, and equipped with the latest weapons, but the Hurricane-Class was different. The aliens had underestimated humanity for far too long. They had assumed that the humans would crumble before them, but the Hurricane-Class was proof of their resilience and ingenuity. The alien commanders were now engaged in frantic discussions. "Our scouts haven't returned," said one. "We can't afford to waste time. We need to act now." Another commander, his face full of frustration, slammed his fist on the table. "We need to take them out before they get the chance to strike first." The humans are clever. They may be waiting for us to make a mistake. The Emperor's orders were clear: destroy the humans, take their planet, and move on. But now the aliens were having second thoughts. They knew they couldn't afford to underestimate this new human weapon. But they also knew that retreat wasn't an option. Their pride as conquerors was on the line. Back on the Hurricane-Class, the crew was ready. The alien fleet was nearing. They had only one shot at this. General Marshall stood once more on the command bridge, his gaze fixed on the incoming fleet. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. But there was no room for fear. Humanity's fate depended on the success of this battle. Ready, he said quietly. Fire when ready. Harris replied. The tension was unbearable, and every person on the Hurricane-Class battleship knew that the next few moments would decide everything. With the Hurricane-Class live up to its name and break the alien forces, or would the aliens crush this final human hope? The first strike was about to begin. The first strike. The moment had arrived. General Marshall's finger ERS hovered over the console, his eyes scanning the view screen ahead. The alien fleet was within range. Now their massive ships, looming like dark shadows in the distance, the Hurricane-Class battleship sat in the vastness of space, ready to strike. The crew stood at attention, every person locked in place, focused on the mission. Target locked. Commander Chen, the weapons officer, said in a calm but determined voice. Ready to fire. On your mark. General Marshall's heart beat faster, but his face remained steady. He knew what had to be done, and there was no turning back. This was the first time the Hurricane-Class would test its full might in combat, and the eyes of every human in the galaxy were on this moment. The fate of humanity rested on this strike. Fire. Marshall commanded with a deep H. The ship's powerful weapons came to life. A bright flash erupted from the bow of the Hurricane-Class, followed by a series of massive energy blasts that tore through the vacuum of space. The alien fleet had no time to react. The beam shot forward, a stream of pure destructive force that split the lead alien ship in two. It was over in an instant. The alien vessel had no chance against the devastating power of the Hurricane-Class main weapon. The rest of the alien fleet reacted in panic. Ships scattered, trying to avoid the onslaught. But it was too late. The Hurricane-Class was relentless. The cannons fired again and again, cutting through the alien ships with precision. Smaller alien vessels were shattered into pieces as the human battleship unleashed its fury on the command bridge. The crew watched in stunned silence as the first few alien ships were destroyed in moments. General Marshall's expression was one of quiet satisfaction, but he knew this was just the beginning. Keep firing, he ordered. Target the larger ships. We need to take out their flagship. As the battle raged, the alien fleet began to regroup, but the damage had been done. The Hurricane-Class had already struck fear into their hearts. Their most advanced ships were falling, and their commanders were scrambling to understand what had just happened. The humans had never shown this kind of strength before, and the aliens had no idea how to respond. The alien flagship, a massive vessel towering over the rest of the fleet, had been keeping its distance. Now it began to move forward, its weapons glowing and preparing to retaliate. But General Marshall wasn't worried. He knew that the Hurricane-Class had been designed specifically for this kind of battle. Focus all fire on the flagship, Marshall said, his voice unwavering. The Hurricane-Class shifted, aligning itself with the alien flagship. The ship's massive guns powered up, and the crew braced themselves. The flagship fired first, its weapons sending bursts of deadly energy toward the Hurricane-Class, but the shields absorbed the hits without faltering. The Hurricane-Class was built to take it. Fire everything, Marshall ordered. The cannons erupted once more, sending a barrage of fire toward the alien flagship. The energy blasts collided with the ship shields, but they weren't enough to hold. The shields flickered and began to crack under the relentless assault. Then, with a final powerful blast, the shields failed, and the Hurricane-Class fire tore through the alien flagships, all ripping it apart. The alien fleet watched in horror as their flagship was destroyed, its remains drifting into space. Panic spread like wildfire. The commanding officers of the alien fleet scrambled to organize a retreat, but it was already too late. Their morale had been shattered, and they knew they couldn't win this fight. General, they're retreating. Lieutenant Harris exclaimed, "The remaining alien ships are pulling back. They're abandoning the battle." Marshall's heart raced, but he knew better than to assume victory just yet. The alien fleet might have lost their flagship, but that didn't mean the battle was won. The humans couldn't afford to get careless. Keep up the pressure, Marshall ordered. Don't let them regroup. The Hurricane-class unleashed more energy blasts, hitting the remaining alien ships with devastating force. One by one, the alien vessels were destroyed, leaving only a few scattered survivors. Despite their retreat, the aliens were still powerful. They would fight again. But for now they had been defeated. The tension on the command bridge was palpable as the crew continued their work. The battle was far from over, but the first strike had been a resounding success. The alien fleet had been crippled, and their advance had been stopped. Marshall allowed himself a brief moment of relief, but he knew the real fight was just beginning. The aliens would not give up easily. The Hurricane-class would have to be ready for whatever came next. The crew knew this too. They had won the first battle, but the war was far from over. The crew held their position, preparing for the next phase of the conflict. The alien forces might have been shaken, but they would be back, and the humans would be ready. This was just the beginning of their fight for survival. Alien forces react. The dust of the first battle had barely settled before the alien commanders started issuing new orders. The Hurricane-class battleship had devastated their fleet, and the retreat was already in motion. But the aliens, although rattled, were far from defeated. They had faced setbacks before and always managed to regroup. This time, though, they had underestimated humanity's potential. On the alien flagship that remained, the commanding officer, Admiral Korth, gripped the armrests of his seat, his knuckles white. The view screen in front of him showed the wreckage of the once proud alien fleet, now reduced to floating debris. His pride as a commander was bruised, and the anchor boiling inside him was palpable. He had to find a way to turn this around. His career, his future depended on it. Reinforcements are on their way, Korth barked, turning to his tactical officer. "I want every available ship to make a stand. We can't allow these humans to humiliate us again." The alien tactical officer quickly accessed the fleet's data. "Admiral, we have additional battleships and a few dreadnoughts coming from the nearby systems. They will arrive within the hour." Korth nodded slowly. "Prepare the fleet for a counter-offensive. I want our ships lined up in a defensive formation. We need to buy time until the reinforcements arrive." Meanwhile, on the Hurricane-class battleship, General Marshall watched as the last remnant of the alien fleet pulled back into the depths of space. His initial sense of victory quickly turned into alertness. This wasn't over. The alien fleet wasn't finished yet, and he could feel the tension mounting among his crew. "Lieutenant Harris, status report," Marshall said, his voice steady but filled with focus. "We've taken down most of their ships, but there are still a few remaining." Harris replied, "Their largest ships are retreating. We have some damage, but nothing critical. Shields are holding strong." Marshall nodded but didn't smile. "Prepare for a possible counterattack. We've wounded them, but we haven't finished the job yet." The crew sprang into action once again. The Hurricane-class had just proved its firepower, but now it had to prove its endurance. Alien reinforcements were on the way, and Marshall knew that the next few moments would be the true test of their battle strategy. If the aliens returned in full force, it could be a battle they couldn't afford to lose. Commander Chen stepped up to Marshall, his face tense but calm. "General, if the aliens bring in more dreadnoughts, we'll have to be careful. We can't take them head-on without proper tactics. We'll need to strike fast and disrupt their formations." Marshall considered this for a moment. The Hurricane-class was powerful, but it couldn't afford to go head-to-head with multiple dreadnoughts for too long. Speed, precision, and tactics were the key. He turned to Harris. "Send a message to all ships in our fleet. Prepare for quick strikes. We hit fast, then pull back to minimize exposure. We can't let them get too close." The crew quickly began making adjustments, preparing for the next phase of the battle. The enemy was reassembling, but the Hurricane-class was ready to show them just how difficult it would be to defeat humanity. Back in the alien fleet, Admiral Korth paced back and forth, his frustration growing. The retreating ships had bought some time, but the arrival of the reinforcement was crucial. The humans' ability to deliver such a devastating blow had shaken his confidence, and now he could only think of one thing: revenge. They think they've won, Sorth muttered more to himself than anyone else, but they have no idea what's coming. He turned toward the communications officer. Signal the reinforcements. Tell them to target the Hurricane class. First, we end this battle now. The alien ships, now reinforced and prepared for another round of combat, began to power up their weapons and regroup. A new sense of determination spread through their ranks. They had lost the first round, but they had not lost the war. The reinforcements would give them the numbers and the strength to wipe out the human threat once and for all. Marshall could sense the change in the air as the alien ships began to maneuver into position. He could see them on the horizon of space, their enormous dreadnoughts and warships slowly encircling the Hurricane class. The next battle was shaping up to be much more difficult than the last. Here they come, Harris said, watching the alien flee on his screen. We're not backing down, Marshall replied, his voice firm. We'll take them down one ship at a time. The stage was set for the next phase of the conflict. The Hurricane-Class Battleship had delivered a crushing blow, but the alien forces were regrouping. It was now a battle of wills, and the fate of the human colony, and perhaps humanity itself, hung in the balance. Prepare for battle, General Marshall commanded. It's time to show them what humanity is capable of. The alien fleet moved forward, and the Hurricane class was ready for the next round. The fight was far from over, but the humans had proven they were not afraid to face the overwhelming odds ahead. The turning point. The Hurricane-Class Battleship was positioned at the heart of the battlefield, its massive guns bristling with power, ready to unleash destruction. The alien reinforcements were in full force now. Dreadnoughts, battleships, and swarms of smaller fighters. It was a massive, overwhelming fleet, and General Marshall knew that this would be the true test of humanity's resolve. The view screen showed the alien ships moving into position, their formation tightening as they prepared to launch their counterattack. The Hurricane class was outnumbered, but its crew wasn't backing down. They had just proven that they could defeat the first wave. Now they had to prove that they could stand against a full-scale alien assault. General, we have incoming fire, Lieutenant Harris reported, his voice tense. They're preparing to launch missiles and energy beams. Shields are holding, but we can't take sustained fire like this for long. Marshall's eyes narrowed. He had expected this. The alien fleet was intelligent and capable. They were coming at them with everything they had, but the Hurricane class wasn't just about brute force. It was about strategy. The aliens had the numbers, but the humans had the will to fight, and that would make all the difference. Commander Chen, target their dreadnoughts. We need to take down their heavy hitters first. Chen nodded. Aye, General. Firing at maximum power, the Hurricane class fired a salvo of energy blasts, each one aimed at the lead alien dreadnought. The blast struck their shields, causing them to flicker and collapse. The ship's main weapon powered up again, sending a powerful beam through the heart of the alien ship, tearing it apart. In a split second, the alien fleet responded with fury, launching a barrage of missiles and energy beams. The Hurricane class shook under the assault, but its shields held strong. Marshall's face was set in determination, knowing that every shot they fired counted. This battle was no longer just about surviving, it was about winning. Suddenly, the situation took an unexpected turn. One of the alien dreadnoughts, heavily damaged from the Hurricane-class initial barrage, detonated in a massive explosion. The shockwave sent smaller alien ships scattering, and several of them collided in the chaos. The humans had created an opening now. Marshall shouted, take advantage of the confusion. Target their rear flank. The crew worked in perfect sync as the Hurricane-class turned sharply, firing at the exposed alien ships. The first strike had shaken the alien forces, and now the second blow had opened the door for the humans to press forward. The Hurricane-class unleashed everything it had: cannons, energy beams, and missile pumps. The alien fleet, disoriented and caught off guard, struggled to react. General, we're making progress, Harris reported. The enemy is in disarray. Their rear ships are retreating. It looks like they can't handle the pressure, but Marshall knew better than to get complacent. The alien fleet might be in disarray, but they were still dangerous. They had more ships, more firepower, and more resources, And worst of all, the alien flagship, their ultimate weapon, was still intact, looming like a dark shadow in the distance. "We're not done yet," Marshall said firmly. "Their flagship is still operational. If we take that down, the rest of their fleet will fall apart. Focus fire on that ship. We finish this now." As if on key, the alien flagship's weapons powered up, and it fired a massive energy beam straight at the Hurricane-Class. The beam struck the ship's shields, but they held strong. The alien flagship wasn't going to give up easily. It was the heart of the fleet, the last bastion of their command. But the Hurricane-Class had one final surprise. "Commander Chen," Marshall said, "activate the plasma torpedoes. It's time to end this." Chen's fingers danced across the console, and with a flash, a series of plasma torpedoes, launched from the Hurricane-Class missile pods, they streaked across the void of space, guided by precise targeting algorithms. The torpedoes impacted the alien flagship shields with brutal force, and the shield generators began to flicker. The alien flagship was vulnerable now, Marshall shouted. The crew fired everything they had. Energy beams from the Hurricane-Class main cannons tore through the weakening shields of the alien flagship, and with a final blast, the ship's hull cracked open. The explosion was massive, ripping the alien flagship apart. In a blinding flash of light, debris flew in all directions, and the alien fleet came to a sudden halt. For a moment, there was silence in the vastness of space. Then, as the wreckage of the alien flagship drifted into the void, the remaining alien ships turned and began to retreat, their morale shattered by the loss of their most powerful weapon. "We did it," Lieutenant Harris said, disbelief in his voice. "The flagship's gone. They're retreating." Marshall's eyes never left the view screen, but a small victorious smile tugged at his lips. "The battle isn't over until they're gone. Keep firing." The Hurricane-Class continued to press the attack, chasing down the fleeing alien ships. They were outmatched now, their ranks in chaos. The humans had made their stand, and it had been enough to send the alien forces into retreat. The battle was turning in humanity's favor, and the aliens knew it. The first strike had shaken them, but this was the turning point. The Hurricane-Class had proven that humanity was no longer the weak species they had once been. Now, the aliens would have to reckon with the true power of humanity's resolve. The victory was close, but Marshall knew this was just the beginning of a long, hard war. The alien forces would regroup, and they would return, but for now, humanity had earned a moment of triumph. The tide of battle had finally turned. Victory at last. The battle had raged for hours, but now, as the remnants of the alien fleet scattered into the dark expanse of space, General Marshall stood at the command bridge of the Hurricane-Class battleship, his gaze fixed on the view screen. His expression was a mixture of relief and cautious determination. The Hurricane-Class had won the day, but the war was far from over. "General," Lieutenant Harris said, his voice breaking the silence, "the alien fleet is retreating. Their forces are in disarray. We've broken their command." Marshall nodded, his fingers resting lightly on the armrest of his chair. "We've done our part, but don't let your guard down just yet. They'll regroup and return. This victory is just one step." The crew had fought valiantly, and it was clear that the aliens, though formidable, had underestimated humanity's resolve. The Hurricane-Class had proven itself as more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of human defiance, and today that defiance had brought them victory. The screens flickered as the communications officer, Surgeon Weaver, turned toward Marshall. "General, we're receiving a message from command. They want a status update." Marshall leaned forward. Patchett, through the familiar face of Admiral Calloway, appeared on the screen. The older officer's stern face was lit up by the glow of his command center. "Marshall, we've been following the battle." "It's over then?" "Yes, Admiral," Marshall replied. "The alien fleet is retreating. We've crippled their forces. The flagship is destroyed, and the remaining ships are falling apart." Admiral Calloway's lips curled into a tight smile, but his eyes remained serious. "Well done, Marshall. You've proven what humanity is capable of today. This victory will resonate throughout the galaxy. But as you said, don't get comfortable. The aliens will be back, and we'll need to prepare for their next move." Marshall agreed. "Understood, Admiral. We'll keep the pressure on them. We'll be ready for whatever comes next." The transmission ended, and Marshall turned back to the crew. There was a shared sense of accomplishment in the room. but also an understanding that the war was far from won today. They had taken the first step toward ensuring humanity's future. "All right, people," Marshall said, his voice commanding. "We've earned a moment of rest, but there's no time to waste. Start repairs and prepare for the next phase. We'll need to keep the pressure on the aliens, and we'll need all hands on deck to rebuild our forces and prepare for whatever they throw at us." The crew nodded, and everyone went to work, making sure the Hurricane-Class was in top condition for whatever came next. The battle had shown them what they could achieve, but now the real challenge would be sustaining this momentum outside the ship. The alien forces were retreating, their ships fleeing to the far reaches of space. The damage had been done. The Hurricane-Class had crippled their offense, and humanity had delivered a powerful message. They were no longer an easy target. The aliens had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity's potential. Back on the Hurricane-Class, however, the crew knew they couldn't rest for long while they had won this battle. The war was far from over. The alien empire would regroup, strategize, and return. They wouldn't stop until humanity was destroyed or conquered, and the Hurricane-Class would need to be ready for that moment. On the bridge, Marshall sat back in his chair, the weight of leadership pressing on his shoulders. He had witnessed the courage of his crew, their determination to protect humanity at all costs. The victory was theirs, but it had come at a price. The cost of this victory was written in the lost lives of soldiers and civilians, and in the knowledge that there would be more battles to fight. "We shown them that humanity won't go down without a fight," Marshall muttered to himself, "but we'll need to do more than just survive. We need to end this war once and for all." He turned to Harris. "Prepare a message for the human colonies. Let them know we're not done yet. This victory is just the beginning." Harris nodded and began typing the message. Marshall stood looking out the view screen at the distant stars. The Hurricane-Class Battleship had turned the tide today, but he knew that the galaxy was still full of unknown threats. The aliens might be regrouping now, but they were far from finished. Humanity had proven its strength, but Marshall understood that this victory wouldn't be the last. They would face more challenges, more enemies, and more obstacles. The future was uncertain, but as long as the Hurricane-Class stood strong, they would fight. They would protect their home. The battle had been won. The Hurricane-Class had shaken the alien forces to their core, but the war was far from over. Humanity's greatest challenge was just beginning, and the Hurricane-Class was ready for the next battle. Aftermath and reflection. The victorious hum of the Hurricane-Class Battleship was a strange comfort in the silence that followed the battle. The crew, though physically exhausted, had a sense of pride that was palpable. They had not only survived an overwhelming attack, but had decisively repelled the alien forces, something no one had dared to believe possible just days before. But amid the triumph, General Marshall felt ignoring unease. The battle was won, yes, but it was only one battle in what could become an endless series of brutal fights. The Hurricane-Class had shown its might, but Marshall knew that the aliens would learn from their mistakes. They would regroup, evolve, and find ways to strike back even harder. This victory was a stepping stone, not the end of the war. In the mess hall, the crew gathered for a brief rest, sharing quiet conversations and lingering glances. They were heroes today, but tomorrow would bring more challenges. The ship's senior officers sat around a table, the atmosphere heavy with the weight of what they had just accomplished. "We did it," Lieutenant Harris said, his voice still holding a tone of disbelief. "The fleet's gone. They're retreating for now, and they won't forget." Marshall replied, his voice steady, but filled with the knowledge that their enemies were not so easily defeated. This was a victory, but the war isn't over. They'll be back, and we need to be ready for them. Commander Chen, who had been silent for most of the discussion, spoke up. "General, with all due respect, we've proven ourselves. The Hurricane-Class is more than capable of holding its ground. The aliens have seen our power. They know what we're capable of." "They know," Marshall agreed, "but knowing and facing it are two different things. They'll come back with a new strategy, maybe different ships, new weapons. Who knows? We've made an impact, but we've only delayed their ultimate goal." The conversation shifted to tactics. The Hurricane-Class had dealt a severe blow to the alien fleet, but humanity still faced an uncertain future. They had to take stock of the damage, rebuild their forces, and prepare for a counter-offensive that might come sooner than they expected. We need to reinforce our position, Marshall continued, addressing his officers. We can't just sit here and wait for them to regroup. We need to strike back before they can recover. Chen looked thoughtful. We could launch a raid on their supply lines, take out their bases on the edge of our space. It would force them to divert resources and slow down their rebuilding efforts. Good idea, Marshall said, but we can't spread ourselves too thin. We'll need to keep one eye on their homeworlds. If they come back with a full force, we need to be prepared. A voice broke through the tension, one of the junior officers from the communications department. General, we've received transmissions from several human colonies. They're celebrating the victory. They're thanking us for saving them. But they also want to know what's next. What should we tell them? Marshall paused, feeling the weight of leadership heavier than ever. He could already hear the voices of families of people who had been scared for their future, now finding hope in the humanity's strength. The Hurricane-Class had become a symbol not just of military might but of resilience, of the human spirit. Tell them the truth, Marshall said softly, his voice carrying the authority that had led his crew to victory. We've won this battle, but there are more ahead. We won't stop until the alien threat is eliminated. But this war isn't over. The officer nodded, turning to deliver the message to the colonies. Marshall turned back to his crew, their faces expectant, awaiting the next move. We have one job now, Marshall said firmly. We have to protect humanity. We've taken a significant step today, but we can't afford to rest on our laurels. The alien will be back, and when they do, we'll be waiting. As the crew began preparations for the next phase of the war, Marshall stood at the front of the room, looking out the view screen at the stars beyond. The Hurricane-Class Battleship had delivered a powerful message to the galaxy. Humanity was not to be underestimated. They had faced overwhelming odds and emerged victorious. But as the battle had shown, victory was temporary. The true fight lay in ensuring in humanity's survival, in preparing for what was to come. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and the alien forces were only one of many threats. The war was far from over, but for the first time humanity had a chance to show that their strength, ingenuity, and resolve could overcome anything. The Hurricane-Class had become more than just a battleship. It was humanity's promise to the universe that they would not back down. But the war had only begun. But General Marshall knew one thing for sure: humanity was ready for whatever came next, and the Hurricane-Class would lead them to victory once more.